Within this video, we're going to cover how to use some of the sculpting tools here inside of the Unreal Engine. Now, we also have a material on this, and at the very end, I'll show you how to go ahead and create this material, because in this case, we don't need UVs at all to deal with this. So without further ado, let's get sculpting. So to start this, we want to go ahead and start on a completely new mesh to work with. I don't want to mess with anything that's already inside the engine. So I'm going to come up here and go to select mode. I'm going to change this down here to modeling. And this is actually where all the sculpting stuff is as well. So I'm going here. And at the very top, we have a whole bunch of shapes up here in the top left. I'm going to go ahead and just choose a sphere. And I do want to point out down here at the very bottom, I have this set to go to a current folder. What that means is that when I create the sphere, it's going to go to somewhere where I can find it. So I can go ahead and click on this and just make sure that it is on current folder. And down here in my content drawer, I've actually created a new folder. So underneath my static meshes, I do have another one down here called engine models. This is where it's going to be saving. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and just click in the world like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and just choose the complete down here at the very bottom. Like so. So now I have a sphere, and you will see that that is now down here. To create the bridge, I want to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger than it already is. So I'm going to hit F and zoom in on it and kind of back up and then just go ahead and just scale this up. And I want it to basically cover this corner because I'm going to go ahead and just bring a couple of these arms out to create this bridge. So something about like that. Now I can go ahead and start actually working with the sculpting tools. This one, this deform section right here. And specifically what I'm going to start with is this desculpt. So this is a dynamic sculpt. So what it's going to do is it's going to start creating polygons as I start to pull and work with this. So this is really handy because I don't have to worry about UVs or anything. And the other thing that I want to do is I want to point out this little button up here in the top right-hand corner of my viewport. This is going to break this up, this viewport, into 4 different panels. So I'll go click on that one. And what's really helpful about this is that I can, if I zoom out using my mouse wheel here, I can find that sphere, or if I just press the F key on the keyboard, it'll frame it on there. And you can see as I move my cursor over here on this bottom right quadrant, it's actually moving in all of them. So let's go ahead and zoom out just a little bit. Now I do want to make my brush a little bit larger. I can very easily do that by clicking on dragging on this, which works really well. And I can change this from world scale. So how big is it? Maybe 100 units, maybe 200 units in diameter. Or I can actually change this to just be a scale here. Now I can also, while I'm working, which is very helpful, just use the bracket keys on the keyboard. If I just keep tapping them, you can see I can make it larger and smaller. So now that I've got all that worked out, let's go ahead and start actually sculpting on this. So if I click and drag, now I am down here, but you can definitely watch it happen in any of these other views. So if I click and drag on this, you'll notice that I'm actually starting to kind of build a bridge across here, which is perfect. It's exactly what I want to do. And I'm keeping an eye kind of on this bottom right-hand corner while I'm doing it because it's just going to be most helpful for my kind of design process. All right, so I can go ahead and just move this over a little bit in the bottom right hand again, and I can go ahead and just start to drag this across, right? So now, let me turn this so you can actually see this kind of happening, right? So you can see this is kind of building up that kind of shape that I'm looking for. Now, the reason that I'm actually using this top view over here is because I want to pull directly across. Because if I'm going to go ahead and click this little button right here, started sculpting inside this perspective view, I might start to kind of pull it down and up and over, and it's going to get really wonky, for lack of better terms, and I don't want that. I want to keep it nice and flat as much as I possibly can. There are times when I definitely want to work in here, like maybe I want to have this kind of move further down across this surface, right? So I can kind of move around in here and kind of play with this as I need and sculpt in the details that I want. But for the most part, because this is a bridge, I wanted to keep it nice and flat. So you can see this is definitely going to add all kinds of very interesting problems as I start to kind of sculpt in perspective. So keep that in mind. Now I do want to create kind of a ramp so my player can actually get up on top of here on both sides, so this one and this one. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm just going to start to kind of pull this down a little bit like so. And we'll go over to this other side and do the same thing, just to kind of push it down inside of the mesh. Now I don't plan on using this mesh anywhere else inside of my world. This is going to be very unique to this specific location. So that's going to be one thing that we definitely kind of worry about. All right, so now that I have this all set up, something I definitely want to do is I want to make this as flat as possible across here so my character doesn't actually fall off by accident. So we're going to have to use a different kind of sculpting to deal with that. That other kind of sculpting is actually vertex sculpting. Right now we're using the dynamic sculpting, and you can see that right now we have our dynamic sculpting. We want to be using our V sculpting, which is the one just to the left of it. So before we actually click that button though, make sure that you accept what it is that you've been working on down here at the bottom of the screen. And now we can change over. So let's go ahead and click on that V sculpt button right there. And we can change the different kinds of brushes we're working with right here. Now, mine is currently set to the move. What I want to do is actually change this. So I'm going to click on that button and change this to the plane W. And what this allows us to do, if I look over here to the left at the 0, 0, 0 location of the world origin, we have our little plane indicator. And this is going to be where our sculpt is going to try and get to. So as an example, if I click and drag on this, you'll notice that it's flattening everything down to that spot. That's not what I want. So to make my life a little easier, I'm going to go and grab the little ends of the gizmo here, and I can move this into a position so I can kind of create a nice flat spot on my little bridge here. So about like so, I think works pretty good. Taking a look at it from all angles because I know better. I definitely don't want to goof this up. Of course, there's always the undo. All right, pretty happy with that. So now, if I start to actually sculpt on this, I'm going to brush a little bit bigger here. You may notice that you start to get this kind of interesting pink. And this is because it's actually pulling the stuff that's underneath it up. And so if you take a look at it from below, you can see this is a total and complete mess. And that's not what I want. So to get around this, we have a couple of options. I'll go ahead and undo that. First, I'm going to go ahead and just make my brush a whole lot smaller by using it on the bracket keys. And if I click and drag, you can see I don't have that problem anymore. Because the brush acts like a sphere, it's actually grabbing a lot of geometry from all over in the world. So I can continue to just kind of create this nice flat area. I'll go ahead and move over here. See, this might be a little higher than I want, but that's fine. I'm not worried about it because I can always hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and I can kind of smooth down the edges on this. A nice even area right across there. Let's make this a little bit taller, right? So come back over here and smooth that down and come over here as well. Go ahead and accept this one. So perfect. So now my player should be able to traverse across this real easy. So I'll just right click, go ahead and say play from here. And now I can walk right up on top of this. Perfect. And my character isn't going to fall off super easily. Excellent. So next we want to go ahead and put a material on this so we don't have to worry about its UVs. The textures I'm going to be using are from Polyhaven. These are totally and completely free. I highly suggest using them, and I highly suggest throw them a little bit of Patreon love too. I am not sponsored by them, but they do an amazing job, and I always show my students and my teachers this. So if you want to use these, go ahead and use them. If not, that's totally fine. You can use your own. So next, let's go ahead and create the material. Now, we do have some material tutorials, so you can check those out if you want a little bit of a help. So we're going to make something very, very simple here. All I need to do is go ahead and create a material, right-click anywhere inside of the content drawer, just come up here to Material. We'll go ahead and just name this one. You can see it's down here in the bottom left. We'll go ahead and name this one World Projection. And then we just need to go ahead and double-click on it to open it. With the material open, we need a very specific node, and it's actually called a world coordinate three-way. So if you just right-click anywhere in the grid and type in three-way, you'll find this world three-way coordinate. Like so. Now, this looks intimidating, but don't worry, I'll walk you through it. It's actually really easy to deal with. This first three little pins over here in the top left of this are actually looking for a texture object. So just go ahead and right-click and type in texture object. You'll find it here at the very top. And this is looking for a specific texture. Now, like I said, I'm going to use the textures that I was talking about before. So I'm going to grab this mud cracked, and I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit so that I can actually drag this directly into this texture spot right here. There we go. And I'm actually going to need another one for the normal as well. So I can select this one and Control D to duplicate. I'll just drag it down here for the moment, bring this back up, and I want to grab the normal and drag it into there, like so. Now what we need to do is just connect this to these first three pins, like so. And we need to also be able to control how often this is going to be tiling. And that's where these three pins right here are going to come in. So if I hold down the S key on the keyboard as in snake, I can just left mouse click and I get a scalar parameter. Don't need to rename it. We'll just call this one text UV. And I'm going to go and just click and drag this into here. Now, real quick, before I go too far, you'll notice that the default value, if I hover over this, is 512. So I'm going to want to set this to 512 here in a minute. So I'll go ahead and connect all of these up like so. And over here on the far left, with this node connected, I want to just make sure that this value right here is set at 512 where it was before. Perfect. And then we'll just take our XYZ out and connect it to the base color. So what this is doing is actually projecting this in the world in three ways, X, Y, and Z, which is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and take these two nodes, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate them down below. and hook up my normal, just like I had done before with the other one. And this one is going to go into my normal input, like so. Then I just need to apply this to my object. So I'll get this out of the way, and with this object selected, let's go ahead and come down here to my content drawer, and this is my world projection. I'll go ahead and just click and drag this on here, and ta-da, I don't have to worry about UVs, which is awesome. Now, this may be too big for a material on here or a texture on here, so what I can do is just select this guy, and let's just set this to something like 200, and it's getting closer. What if we set it to 100? There we go, that's pretty good. So we can just close that down, and yes, I'll go ahead and save that. So within this tutorial, we went ahead and covered some of the sculpting tools, both the dynamic sculpt and the vertex sculpt, as well as how to create a very simple material that you can use on a very organic object and never have to worry about the UVs. So if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, or confusion you need cleared up so that you can continue to create, just go ahead and leave a comment down below. And don't forget to be Cleverlike and subscribe.